Meeting, December 21st, 2023, Water and Sewer Authority of Cabarrus County meeting to order. Have an agenda before us. First on the agenda is a recognition. And I'll let Robin make a couple of comments about that.
We would like to recognize Tammy tonight for 30+ years of service. And I'm sorry, I was not planning on being emotional about this. She came to work for us in August of 1993 at our wastewater treatment plant as the secretary. She stayed at Rocky River and was promoted in 2005 to serve this board in July. Hey there, come on in. And in July of 2005, she came to this office, and Tammy came to this office. I came to work for WSACC in November of 2004. So Tammy has been with me my whole career at the authority. And tonight we tell her goodbye for a new adventure. So WSACC really appreciates everything you've done, and this executive board appreciates everything you've done.
Thank you. Thank y'all very much. WSACC is a wonderful place to work for. I mean, I just can't tell you enough. I just thank my supervisors, managers, I'm looking forward to the future, what I see happen, and what they've all done for me, the understanding. I just can't say enough. I'm very, very blessed, and I'm thankful.
Congratulations.
Job. Thank you.
Tammy, on behalf of the board, I just echo what Robin said. We've only seen a little bit of what you've provided to this organization. We see it, once a month. The folks you work with see it every day, and I'm sure it's way more impressive than what we get to see. But you've kept us straight. You've kept us out of the ditch. Make sure we do everything the way we should by the book, and you've been a good guide for us, and we appreciate your service.
Thank you so much.
And Tammy, if you miss us on Thursdays once a month and want to keep feeding us.
Got another quick announcement. Got a letter earlier a week or so ago. Our own Jim Sells has announced that he's going to step down from the board. Sadly enough, he's been with us since June of last year, June of 2022. So about 18 months he's been with us. A fairly short stint, but he's made an impact on this board in a lot of ways. But more importantly, Jim's made an impact on this whole community over his career. We're a safer place in all of Cabarrus in the region because of Jim's hard work in emergency management and related topics. But I get the impression you're going to be doing some more of that, and that's part of the reason it's going to take you away from the board. We do have a card here for you. We just want to say thank you for your service. And I understand Randy Holloway will be Mount Pleasant's representative at the next meeting. So Jim, thank you for your service. Okay, moving on. We have some unfinished business. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of November 16th, 2023?
Moved.
Second. Got a motion, a second, any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That motion carries. All right, new business. Wendy, our audit.
Let me see, bring another presentation. As you know, we're required to be audited each year. Potter & Company is our auditors. John Kapler he's a partner, and he's joined us via Zoom tonight. I have a quick presentation. He's going to go over a couple of financial statements. Here they come. It's been about a week here. There's 2 or 3 of them this year. The staff here prepares the financial statements, and they review it, and then we submit it to the LGC by October 31st, and we are required now to present it to you within 60 days, which is why it brings us here today in December. So we have an unmodified opinion on our financial statements once again, which of course is the best that you can receive, and there was no material financial statement findings, and the financial statements has already been submitted for the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting for FY 23. The next slide here shows net position over the last 10 years. And net position is different than fund balances, which is probably what you're used to seeing in your own towns, cities, counties. But this is full accrual accounting. So if you have your own business, this is what you would typically see. A big difference here is there's not, the capital is not expensed each year, is depreciated over time. And so a big reason why you see that increase over the last couple of years is Charlotte Water is paying us, and we've got about 16.9 million as part of that, that they've received in revenue or in contributed capital, I should say. But it's not been expensed. So it has been spent, but it's not, it's been capitalized and not expensed. So you see that increase there. And here is our operating revenues and expenditures for the last 10 years. In 23, our expenses were 22.4 million and our revenue was 21.1. The major difference, or the reason you see expenditures over revenues each year is depreciation is included in the operating expenses, and that was $7.5 million in 2023. And another slide I brought, I thought you'd be interested to see the system development fees. You can see it was lower in 2023, about $3.9 million, but none of that was allocated to any capital projects. So that just added to the total. So the brownish color, I guess, is the amount received each year. And then the pinkish color is the amount available. So right now, when as of June 30th, 2023, we have $9.6 million in system development fees that we can allocate to projects.
Wendy, going back to that previous slide, where the revenues are less than the expenditures, is that typical that you include the depreciation? Sorry.
Yes, that's, as you can see, that's been the trend over the last 10 years, but we're financially sound. It's not showing because it's just operating revenues and
Right.
expenditures. And we did have $3.5 million in investment earnings this year. So in total, income before capital contributions, before that money we received from Charlotte Water, was still $100,000. And we're charging you what we think our expenses are going to be for the year. So we should be breaking even.
If we didn't have to do depreciation, we'd be above.
Right, yeah, because like I said, in that, the expenditure number there, or expenses number there, there's $7.5 million in depreciation.
Thank
Now, on the other side, you're not included, like if you're a typical fund balance fund, I guess, you would expense anything that you bought, like if we bought a truck or a car, you would see that total amount come out, but if you're familiar with depreciation, you're just taking a little bit each
Right.
year.
Right.
That percentage been consistent over the years of depreciation, or is this a higher percentage than previous years?
I know for the last several years, I cannot speak for the earlier years, but the last several years, it's been about $7.5 million. Yep. All right. System development fees. Now, we do have one financial performance indicator, and this is because the local government commission, they used to, I've been doing this for over 20 years, they used to look at every single audit that came into their, they looked at it. Now what we do is a data input form. So basically we take our audit and we input key data points, and then it spits out sort of indicators that they think is important. And what it showed for us is a capital asset ratio. And that's because our capital assets being depreciated is 237 million, and we depreciate over half of that, which would be an indicator if, so that would show that you're not investing into capital assets. But that's totally not the case for us. It does not look at our construction in progress, which is about $60 million in the financial statements. And of course, once you include our phase 4 and phase 3, projects, we're gonna more than double what our capital assets being depreciated is. We will see this again next year. I'll go ahead and tell you, because we will not be able to bring in phase 3 until the FY25 audit, because it will not be completed until after June 30th next year. So it's just something, like I said, as you enter the information on the form, this is what it shows, but we can explain, and we're on it, we have a lot of money we're investing into our capital. Any questions there? We do have to, I will need you to sign, there's a letter, they take these seriously, so we do have to sign a letter. Basically, the letter says what's up there, and I will send that to the LGC. And is there any more questions before I turn it over to John Kaplar?
Any questions?
You have that letter?
I do, I have it with us.
Pass
We can,
that out. We can sign it
yep.
as we go.
sure.
Take care of that little problem.
Okay. There you go, whenever you get a chance, it's fine.
Okay.
All right, John? Can you hear us? John?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yep, we can.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thanks. I'll just kind of piggyback on some of the items that Wendy kind of touched on. Again, just in a little bit more detail based on, items that are in your, annual financial statements. Just to kind of go over some of the details that Wendy's already talked to you in more detail on that. Wendy, do we have kind of like those items that we talked about?
We'll start with
Yeah.
A, scheduling.
Yeah. Yeah. And just to reiterate too, just the point that Wendy made is we have issued an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that we can give that the statements are fairly presented in all material aspects at June 30th, 2023. Like Wendy said, this is no different than what it has been in the past. And so it's commonly what we refer to as a clean opinion in that. So just wanted to let you aware of that we're still good there. So the couple items that we're kind of just touch on here, and this will kind of go and lead into one of the slides that Wendy talked about, which was total net position for this year. But this is what we call the statement of net position in the government accounting world, which is basically your balance sheet in the for-profit world. And you'll see there that total cash and cash equivalents are the first items that are going to be there. And so at the end of this year, that was 85 million. Just for comparison purposes, at the end of last year, that was about 107 million. Now, the big decrease there is going to be due to the unspent bond proceeds, which are 25 million at the end of this year. Last year, they were 59 million because, like Wendy said, you're doing a lot of those construction projects that you have in phase 3 and 4 that are going on. And the bond proceeds are just being spent on those expenditures. There's another statement that we'll look at too, a couple statements back, which is basically what we say is it's a cash flow statement of cash flows. What basically shows you where your cash came in, where your cash went, and so on and so on. And you'll see that when we get to that statement as to those large amount of capital expenditures that you made for the year. So coming down the, statement of net position, total current assets here for this year, and current means anything that's going to be basically turned into cash or paid in cash within a year. It was 93 million at the end of 2023. At the end of 2022, it was 111 million. Again, the big decrease is going to be because of the bond proceeds that were spent for the capital project funds. Coming down, those non-current assets, that's your property, plant, and equipment. And that's the one item that the comment came in regards to. You'll see there's a more detailed schedule in the notes of the breakdown of what your capital assets are. And as Wendy said, a large portion of your capital assets have to do with your construction in progress. It's not like you're not invested in your capital assets. You are heavily invested in your capital assets. But that just kind of gives you an idea of total amount of capital assets net after depreciation. At the end, and at the end of last year, it was 139 million. This year it was 178. And again, for the additional expenditures and capitalized items that you had in regards to that for this year. Coming down the balance sheet, you'll see there your total current assets for this year or current liabilities were 8,262,000. That's in line with what it has been in the past. And again, current is something that you expect to pay within a year. Your total current ratio, if you took your current assets and looked at the ratio of those current assets to your current liabilities, that's over 11 times. Which is very positive and very financially sound. Coming down, you'll see non-current liabilities. You'll see there that's your total debt that you have on hand. There's a big increase if you went back and looked at last year's amount compared to last year, and it's going to be in the net pension liability. That increased about $2.2 million this year, and that's just basically a factor of what the rates have been and what the determination is in regards to that. So coming down at the very, very bottom is that net position that Wendy was speaking of. And you'll see there that there's the 192 million of net position that you have there. There's the 9,625,000 in system development fees that are restricted, as that you spoke to previously. In your unrestricted balance, and this is the positive thing I wanted to point out to as well, is your unrestricted balance this year increased. Last year it was 37 million. At the end of this year, it was 51 million. So your total amount of your unrestricted, it isn't restricted either by the system developments or your investment that you have in your capital assets during this year increased. That's about $15 million, which is great. Coming over to the next exhibit that we have here is going to be your changes. And again, this is a little bit more of the detail in regards to some of the items that, and this is more of a breakdown with those, more detail of what the operating expenses are that Wendy talked about. And again, yes, that depreciation for y'all has always been a very, very large and non-cash expense that you have from year to year. This year it was 7.5 million. Like Wendy said, the last couple of years it's been over 7 million. So that just kind of gives you the breakdown between that. I will say that your operating revenues for this year did increase 21% compared to where they were at the end of last year. Coming down the statement of revenues and expenditures for this year, you'll see that, as Wendy already pointed out, your investments did increase dramatically compared to what they were last year. The investment earnings, that's 3.5 million. Last year it was like $327,000 or something like that. So it's a huge increase there on the money that you have available. And so your income before capital contributions for this year was a positive $100,000. Continuing then down the statement of revenues and expenses for this year, you'll see that your total change in net position for this year was 19,623,000, and that includes the capital contributions from the governments and then also to the system development fees. This is up about 6.3 million compared to what it was at the end of last year, which was 13.3. Next statement is Exhibit C, which is the statement of cash flows that we talked about. And this is basically takes, the statements that we just looked at and turns everything into a checkbook. Shows you where your cash came in, where your cash went out, because your revenues and expenditures are on a accrual basis of accounting, but this basically turns all that into cash. And so what you always want to see is that your cash flow from operations is positive and you're generating a positive cash flow in regards to that. And you are. The first line up there gives you an idea of what your cash flow that was produced within your operations for this year, this was 4.8 million. Now, once we go below there, you'll see where those capital expenditures occurred during the year. You'll see that you spent $44 million in capital expenditures for this year. You paid down some debt principal, you paid down some debt interest in that regards, and then also too, you received in some capital contributions from Charlotte Water, and then also do the system development fees for this year. So your financing activities actually used $29 million worth of cash, and a big portion of that, again, is for the acquisition and construction of your capital assets that you have on hand. And again, there's the actual cash that you received in investments for this year. So you actually used almost 21.7 million of your cash reserves that you had on hand during the year. Last item that I'll touch on is your budgetary statement, which is in the very, very back. I always kind of like just to touch on this because this is what y'all usually work with and what you budget things for and how you operate. And this is on the non-GAAP basis of accounting. So this is basically a modified accrual. But you'll see there that for this year, for your total revenues, your final budget was 20.45 million. You actually collected $23.1 million in total revenues for this year. Coming down, your operating expenses, you had budgeted almost 17.7 in operating expenses for this year. You actually only spent 14.8. So you had a positive variance there. There was a positive variance in regards to your non-operating expenditures for this year too as well. And then, and the last item that I'll touch on is that your total appropriated fund balance, you actually appropriated part of your fund balance to kind of balance your budget for this year. You didn't have to dip into those reserves for this year. You actually budgeted $20 million or $2 million of fund balance to be appropriated during this year, but you didn't have to dip into that because you actually produced a positive on the modified accrual basis of accounting, almost $20 million worth of revenue for this year. I know that's a lot to digest, but I'll answer any questions or anything that anybody has at this point.
I have one quick question on the 2 million that we had to take deficit for last year. And this year we received more than that. Will we put that back in fund balance?
Yeah, and that's part of the reason why your unrestricted fund balance increased so much.
Other questions for John or for Wendy?
I do need a motion that you accept the financial statements as presented.
So moved.
Have a second? Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Right, that motion carries. All right, Wendy, you're still up.
All right, so the next, there's a resolution before you, and this resolution, is the first step in us, issuing our revenue bonds to pay for phase 4 expansion. It sets in place our financial advisors. It allows us to issue up to $100 million. We don't have the firm price yet, so it's not to exceed $100 million. And it also directs me to send the application to the local government commission, which is due January 9th, and we're set to sell our bonds February 6th. I'll be happy to answer any questions. If not, I'd ask you to approve the resolution.
Any questions on this resolution?
Chairman, I'll move we approve the resolution.
Second.
Motion and second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Wendy. All right, we've got some
All right,
reports.
thank y'all again, though. Thank you again for the opportunity. We look forward to working with you, and thanks again for the great team that you got there. Hope y'all have a great Merry Christmas.
And you.
Thank you, John.
All right, Thomas, got
Yes, sir.
an update.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, got, first update here is on the plant expansion. So our typical, construction pictures and that sort of thing. There we go. So over the past month, we have, the contractor rather has completed installation of 4, that should say substations. At the blower building. Those were long lead time items, so we're happy to have those there and installed. They have continued wire pulling and electrical equipment installation at the blower building. That's a big piece of getting that work completed. They continue backfilling around the south side of the equalization basin. It doesn't look as tall as it used to, but it's all still there. They have completed wall pours at gravity thickener 3 and started wall pours for gravity thickener number 4. They have poured walls down at box 8. That's down near our effluent. That's a sampling location for us. They have started installing instrumentation at aeration basin number 6. They've continued wire pulling at the WAS pump station. And as always, they have continued to work to mitigate those issues with sourcing equipment for phase 3 and the electrical upgrades effort. So a few pictures. This is the current, as of a couple days ago, view of the NEF and EQ basin. Again, with all the backfill, it doesn't look quite as big as it used to, but they're getting closer to final grade there.
Will it stay that way now, just other than the minor yard work?
Yes, sir. So they're still backfilling around it. And then the other EQ basin that gets built in phase 4 will come to the left side of it. So there will be some disturbance there. But otherwise, this is getting close to what it will be in its final state. So these are a couple pictures you probably haven't seen before. We're actually able to get up on top the EQ basin now. We've got the walkway around the outside, handrails up, that sort of thing. And we're even able to get out to the middle. So the picture on the right is looking from the outside of that tank in. So that's looking at the diurnal EQ area. And then the picture on the left is actually looking down inside the nitrification enhancement facility. So that's that facility. You can see the diffusers across the bottom starting to go in, where we will take care of some of the harsh things that are coming from the incinerator, and that will allow us to run in parallel. So that's a key part of the overall project going into place now. Aeration basin number 6. You've seen a number of pictures that kind of look like this. They're doing a lot of work with the instrumentation, the air piping, kind of some of the finer details. So we don't see the big picture changes month to month, but it is coming along. Blower building, kind of similar. The blower building's been up for a little bit, but we've got a couple pictures inside. You can see down there at the far end, they've got their air piping well underway for the 3 blowers that will be installed as part of this phase. And they just poured their concrete pad for that. So we expect the blowers to actually go in somewhat soon here. Another picture inside the blower building. Gravity thickeners, a couple pictures here. In November, we had a picture with the wall forms up for gravity thickener number 3. In December, the walls have all been poured for that. Forms have been removed. So we're happy to see that. And then, so gravity thickener 3, the one we just looked at, is on your left in this picture. On your right, you can see number 4, the formwork going up for it. And they completed the wall pours for it today. Box number 8, this is down near the effluent. The river's in the background there. The floodplain came up as part of the, that was a criteria we had to meet, was the floodplain being higher than it used to be. So they're raising up this box so that we can get access to it and keep within all those rules for the floodplain. Flume 103, they are kind of on hold at the moment there, waiting on some other work to get done kind of in the surrounding areas. But that's basically complete at this point. They've got some wire pulling, and then the actual tie-in for Flume 103 will come sometime early in 2024. The work plan for the next month. They will continue instrumentation, pulling wire at aeration basin 6. Continue installing the air piping and diffusers out at the equalization basin. The course bubble diffusers, just talked about that. They will continue backfill, at the EQ tank. There is some remaining backfill to go in there to make that final. They will continue concrete work around the blower building, couple miscellaneous pads for equipment there. Install instruments and pull wire at the EQ influent meter vault. They are continuing work for concrete at the gravity thickeners, patching the concrete work they've done and that sort of thing. Continuing work at box number 8. And then continue buried piping installation, which thankfully our largest line, the 42-inch line, is nearly complete at this point. So they're, I don't know, 150 feet away, maybe more. 150 feet or so from being complete with that whole line. So that's, we've been looking forward to that. So with that, do you have any questions for me?
Well, as far as the work at box 8, you said the floodplain has changed.
Yeah, so between, the floodplain maps get updated over time. And this was a pretty significant change. So when they did the hydraulic, I'll go back to that one. When they
That looks like 12 feet to me.
it's significant. It's it won't miss out by very far. I can't give you the exact number right now. But the floodplain did come up significantly when they did the hydraulic model to keep all of our water inside all of our features. If if that 100-year flood that they predict would happen, they say that we would need this to be within compliance. So what we will have in the final iteration of this thing is actually a bridge that goes out to it. So in the foreground, kind of where I'm standing taking the picture, is some higher ground, and it'll have a bridge from there over to the top of that box.
So is the floodplain specifically for our wastewater treatment plant?
No, this is the overall firm maps from FEMA, and they've just changed, and so this takes into account the changes that have come over time. We just happen to be at the current iteration of that FEMA map right now.
You have to go 2 foot over freeboard?
Yes, I believe that's the criteria.
So that would affect the residents and all of that downriver, I guess, with that floodplain raising.
Sure, the floodplain changes for everybody at one time. Sometimes those changes are really incremental. It doesn't move a whole lot. This iteration, this most current iteration, it happened to be a pretty big change.
So basically they were in, say, 150-year plane. Now we're in 100-year plane.
Sure. So they will delineate the floodway, which is kind of where the river wants to run when it gets high. The 100-year floodplain, which is what happens, when you get that 100-year event, and then they've got a 500-year floodplain. Okay. So in this case, the old 100-year floodplain has kind of moved out closer to the 500-year floodplain. The overall floodplain's larger than it was.
I would imagine too, Thomas, that this is a reflection of many changes. It's only because we're doing this building that there's a significant piece of that, correct? I mean, that's what I see from a residential perspective. Like there's not any changes that are made, but they seem like they update those maps a lot more often than they used to.
Before FEMA took it over, it was like on a 10-year cycle.
Right.
Since FEMA's taking it over,
I swear, I feel
it's
like it's every
6 months, year
I
and
know.
a half, 2 years,
Yeah,
6
it's
months
a
again.
lot more often.
And it doesn't usually hit stuff that's already there, but new construction's gonna have to be.
That's right. It's made a big difference. Yeah, for sure.
And since we are doing this as part of new construction, we're subject to
Right.
all of those.
Different.
Other questions for Thomas? We still on schedule?
So we're still in that late summer time frame. It looks like overall. They have just provided an updated schedule in the last week or so that looks a little bit farther out, so maybe towards the early October time frame for that. And the reason they've given is the complexity. They do expect all the equipment to show up in time, but there is additional complexity because the electrical equipment, the process equipment is all going to kind of be ready to come online at the same time. So they were hoping when they first started this project, electrical equipment might come in earlier. They'd have all of it online, then bring all the process equipment online. Now it's a lot more intertwined with each other. So they took a more detailed look at that. We feel like they're probably being conservative with some of their timeframes, assuming everything else happens well. But they pushed it out just a little bit there.
Yeah, and to that point, with us being able to permit this capacity before it's completed construction, I won't say it doesn't make a difference, but a month or two doesn't mean we're not waiting for that day that we can start permitting that capacity. So we definitely don't want to let it slip any more than it has to, but I do think Crowder and Brown and Caldwell have displayed a desire to want to tell you October 1 and deliver on September 15th. Than tell you September 1 and deliver on October 1. That they would rather tell you a little more conservative date, a realistic but conservative date, and then beat that date than just tell you what you want to hear and then just so we're not in bad shape at all.
Yeah, good.
And that is a good point relative to the allocation. That's not holding up anything with regards to allocation.
All right, moving on, next report, master plan.
Sure. I'll bring to you an update on the master plan as well. We've got a presentation on that. Not so many pictures with this one. So the master plan is divided into a number of tasks. It's been a while, but we have talked about these various tasks from existing system analysis, the future growth planning, the permitting for an expansion beyond 34 MGD at Rocky River, water resources analysis, looking at our existing system and where there might be capacity bottlenecks or projected capacity bottlenecks, and then the overall master plan development and documentation in the end. So I'll take just a quick look through each of these tasks and let you know where we are on each. So in general, the kind of the orange or red text is in progress. The gray text are things that have been done already. So the existing system analysis has been complete for a while. We're good to go on that. Future growth planning being task 2. They have completed almost all of that. We are setting up meetings with the member jurisdictions to review the final Black and Beach growth forecast and the assumptions that go into those in mid-January. So we've sent out dates, we've started receiving feedback, so it looks like that will indeed be happening in mid-January for those. As far as the MPDES permitting is concerned, today's kind of a timely day to have this. The state did provide comments back on the stream model today, this afternoon, so that was exciting to have. So that moves us from the 3rd bullet down to the 4th bullet, which is the consultant will develop the 7Q10, so those low flow scenarios, low flow in the river, for speculative limits for expansion beyond 34 MGD. So that's our next step towards getting a permit beyond 34 MGD. Water resources analysis is complete. That's all the bathymetric surveys for the reservoirs, safe yield estimates, adequacy assessments on the water side of things. So task 5 is still ongoing. That's our system capacity assessments. So that involves things like our CIP finalizing that. I know you have seen a version and have approved an interim version of the CIP recently. They are working to finalize that and to finalize the spreadsheet that goes along with that. So the CIP finalization ties into task 6 as well, this overall development and documentation task. Again, this will be everything kind of assembled into one report. Aside from the static report, we do have a couple of interactive dashboards that are in development. That includes a CIP dashboard. So being able to monitor triggers for each CIP, being able to see the collections of CIPs and the cost components, estimated cost components of each. A flow monitoring dashboard, which will take advantage of our flow monitoring data and combine that with the flows that are obligated, those developer controlled flows, to give us some projections, some updated projections for where we are versus individual interceptor capacities out in the system. And finally, a flow acceptance dashboard. This one is GIS based. So what we've got is, and we'll have a demo of this available soon. We can show you pieces of it. But each parcel where there is a developer controlled project that has flow acceptance is identified in that dashboard. So it's interactive, it's map based. You can go click on that parcel. It will tell you how many homes are left on it, how much industrial flow, that sort of thing. So they are in development for those. They're hoping to finalize those, mid-January or so. And then that will all kind of culminate into this master plan summary meeting, which will be a combined meeting with member jurisdiction staff in early February of 2024. I think that was all I had for that one. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
All right, any questions on the master plan?
So as far as the interactivity with the dashboards, who maintains that? Is that, or is that something that WSACC is tasked with?
Sure. So let me go back to those just a minute. We will maintain those dashboards. They are pulling data from existing sources that we already have. So they are pulling data from kind of a variety of sources that we already maintain into one place. So we will maintain those. Just having that data will allow it to update. It'll pull from those, many of those automatically. Some of those will be kind of an additional manual entry that we'll do, but it will still give us a better combined picture of some of these things. And this is done in Power BI. So I'm sure some of you may have, this is kind of our first time wading into that, but Microsoft Power BI is the platform for this. But it's pulling from spreadsheets, mainly spreadsheets that we've got in different places, kind of pulling everything together for us.
Other questions? Okay, thank you, Thomas.
Yes, sir.
Hey, Robin, give a communications update.
We've spent a little bit of time on pulling together what we've done to communicate in the community about what is going on. And I don't have any slides. I'm just gonna run through this really quickly so you guys kind of know where we are. In 2023, and we'll start in the summer, and I'll go back to some earlier dates. Mark Plumman's come to our plant. He did a tour. He actually did a article in the Independent Tribune. So we were there as far as media coverage was concerned. Back in 22, if you remember, we had the red dye in the river. We did a news article then on that to let people know that we weren't poisoning them, that it was a study and they were not going to die from the red dye running down the river, and that worked out well for us. In October of 22, we partnered with Lumen, and that's Brian Francis, and a lot of you may know him. We partnered with him and his group, and we are doing a monthly newsletter that Brittany does, and I hope all of you are getting it. If you are not, you need to let myself or Shannon know that you're not on that newsletter list, and we will get that taken care of. And then as far as community engagement is concerned, in 22, Chad, in September of 22, Chad presented to the Real Estate and Building Industry Coalition. He talked to the key players about our capacity. He talked about developer control capacity to try to update them so they had a better understanding of what was going on here with WSACC. In October, he went to Southwest Rotary Club, did the same presentation. And in November, he actually presented and met with Commissioner Kenny Wortman and talked to him about what WSACC was, what we did, what was going on. And then in February, that was in 22, in February, he presented again to the development group with the Cabarrus EDC to inform them about what was going on here with us. And then he also went back in 23, in February of 23, and presented to the Real Estate and Building Industry Coalition again to talk about what was going on with WSACC and how things were being handled. And from that point, we'll jump over to some things that we've done just community-wise. In September, Thomas and I were at a career fair at UNC Charlotte. And we had great visibility there. At that time, we were recruiting for an engineer and we hired Mayara. And I don't know, has our board met her?
Yes.
Okay, you've met Mayara. And she's been a great asset to the WSAC team. And we were very fortunate. That is not where we got her though, but we did get to hire her, thank God. And then in October, we actually went to a future fair at Cabarrus Arena and had exposure there to our juniors and seniors of Cabarrus County schools. They were all there for to meet with colleges, to be introduced to community college, and WSAC was a part of that process. Pat presented to the Cabarrus County Board of Commissioners in October of 23. He presented to Mount Pleasant Board of Commissioners also in October. And in November, he presented to the Concord City Council. In November of this year, we had Senator Newton out at our plant with a tour with his team. We also had the Concord City Council out in December. Actually, just this week, we had Kevin Crutchfield, House Representative 83, and Diamond Staten Williams, House Representative 73. She came out, they were out on a plant tour on Wednesday of this week. Perry Productions is now the leading website designer and manages our website for us, which has been a very good transition for us. Website wise, we've changed out our headshots of our management team. We've done newer bios, so that has been updated. And our newsletter button is available on our website for just, if you click the button, you can get the newsletter. The other thing is we had Perry Productions pull a list of items that clicks on our website, and we have had 537 views of employment on our website. That's where people go to initially. And then actually the second thing that they click on is our Rocky River facility. And our expansion. So that's knowledge that is getting out there because people are actually looking from the website. So in saying that, we will be back first quarter of the year, in the first quarter, to give you another update as to what we are doing to hopefully educate our community, help them understand who we are and how we're moving forward.
Question, Robin.
Yes, sir.
I've never looked because I didn't have any reason to look, but do we have a presence? Or would we need a presence on the Cabarrus County website? It would refer to the wastewater treatment.
I don't know. When we
I'm just thinking out of the box.
Yeah,
It's another avenue of getting it out.
right. We have actually met with the communication folks of Cabarrus County, City of Kannapolis, City of Concord. We did that early on. I think that was in 22. And talked about when big things happened with the authority, would they help us put some of that information out there? And they've all agreed to that. So when we've asked, they have participated in putting information out there. So in saying that, I would think that that's the way we would utilize Cabarrus County's website, is if there was something that we really needed to push out to more than where we're at, that we can utilize our jurisdiction's communication folks for that. Any other questions?
One thing I'll add,
Robin, I just checked and it is on their website. There's a link.
Okay, all right, there you go.
So it's already on there.
It's already on there. There's a link. I did not realize that one. Thank you.
Yeah, I just looked. Thank you.
one thing Michael and I had a conversation with about a month ago, maybe less than a month ago, about WSAC putting press releases out about annual allotment and the distributions.
Right.
My advice to Michael was that's too confusing. That's the one area maybe we don't want to do. And if the board disagrees, I'm sure Robin and Michael and staff can do that. But my thought at the time was we don't want developers thinking there's all of a sudden new capacity, because we're telling them capacity and it's the same capacity. So it's probably better that jurisdictions communicate the end game that's going out in the development community. But that was just my advice. So if you think differently, then I think we can talk about that.
Absolutely. And the calls that we feel that come into our, come in here about capacity, and Chad, correct me if I'm wrong, we don't make that allocation. So we educate the people that call us to tell them how it is currently being handled, and try very diligently. If it gets thicker than, we don't do that from myself or someone that answers the phone, then we refer them to engineering, and Chad can go into all the details of how we generally handle that. Just so that people understand that it's not first come, first serve, it's allocation by jurisdiction. So we try to educate people that call.
Other questions for Robin? Comments? You've really stepped up sort of the public view of WSAC, and I think that's a positive thing. It's sort of been hidden over the years and as an organization, and I think that's changed somewhat for some not so great reasons, but I think we've made, lemonade out of lemons to really raise the profile of the organization. I think that's a good positive outcome. So good job.
Thank you.
All right, we will open up the meeting to public comments. Is there anybody who'd like to speak to the board of directors?
I'd like to ask a question, and it is about the site visit on Wednesday, and obviously I wasn't there, but I hope it went well, and I'd like to hear some feedback.
It did. It went very well. We toured both Rocky River and went to Muddy Creek as well, with the group. It has been quite interesting with all the communication that we've done, and a lot of it's because it has become a higher priority, but the interest that people really have in it, that they seem to really enjoy and get a lot out of the tours and hearing firsthand. I do think there's value with sitting down in those smaller groups with people, because they can feel a little more free to ask questions, and you can really have a little more open discussion, easier discussion on things. And so, yeah, it went really well. It's something that's very much worth the time for WSAC, for sure.
It's an eye opener how complex treating sewer is for people that have no clue. It's easy to say give me more capacity. Even developers don't fully understand the complexities of things. So that's good to do that.
Well, and I think the tour that you gave our council was, I'm showing pictures every month, but there is nothing like putting boots on the ground, and they all came back with a deeper appreciation as well, and understanding of, I think, a better understanding to then educate and make the decisions that we have to make on allocation. So 100% agree that the interest has been piqued for not the great reasons, but education is critical. So thank you for doing that.
Thomas had to chase JC all over the plant.
Yeah, he's fun, isn't he?
They were both very interactive, and we had quite a tour. We went everywhere.
Sure you did. I should have told you was gonna have your hands full with him, but
No, it was
I figured you'd figure it out. Yeah. You had a lot of electrical questions, I'm sure.
He did. He looked at all the
I'm sure he did. I'm sure he did.
All right, hearing no more public comments, we will roll on to closed session. Do I hear a motion to go into closed session under GS 143-318-11A1 and 4?
So moved.
Second.
All right, a motion is